There is a specific kind of fear that doesn't leave you when the sun comes up. It's not the fear of monsters under the bed, it's the fear of the familiar turning against you. The knock on the door that sounds exactly like your mother's, but you know she's already asleep upstairs. The forest trail you've walked 100 times suddenly going silent. Or the toy in the corner that you swear is facing the wall, but every morning, it's looking right at you. Tonight, we are diving into 3 true stories that defy logic. Stories sent in by people who swore they'd never tell a soul. These aren't just nightmares. These are memories they can't erase. If you are new here, consider subscribing. We explore the dark corners of reality so you don't have to go alone. Let's begin. Our first story comes from a woman named Laura, who lived in a rural part of Virginia back in 2018. She lived alone in a small farmhouse surrounded by acres of empty fields. It was a quiet life, the kind where you know every sound the house makes. The creak of the third stair, the hum of the old refrigerator. So when she heard the knock at the door at 3:17 a.m., she didn't move. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, telling herself it was the wind. Then the knock came again, 3 slow, deliberate raps. She grabbed her phone and checked the security camera app. The porch was empty. She looked out the window just to be sure. Nothing but darkness. She almost convinced herself she was hearing things until the knock came a 3rd time. But this time, it wasn't at the front door. It was at her bedroom door. The door to her room was a heavy oak slab, solid. She didn't have a peephole in it. She whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice. A voice she recognized. It was her mother, who lived 3 hours away. It said, "Laura, I'm cold. Let me in." The problem? Laura's mother had passed away 6 months prior. The voice was perfect. Inflection, the accent, even the way her mother used to say her name with that soft drawl. Laura backed away from the door, dialing 911. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, the voice changed. It dropped an octave, becoming guttural, distorted, like a radio station trying to tune in to the wrong frequency. It started whispering things only Laura knew. Secrets she had never told anyone. Then, silence. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the house, the attic, the crawl space, nothing. But when they opened the bedroom door, which had remained locked from the inside, they found scratch marks on the inside of the door. Deep gouges in the wood, as if something had been trying to claw its way in from her side of the room. Laura moved out the next week. She told me she still wakes up at 3:17 a.m. every single night, listening for the knock. And sometimes, when the house settles, she swears she hears breathing on the other side of her new bedroom door. Our second story comes from a man named David. He was an experienced outdoorsman. He'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail for years. So when he decided to go on a solo camping trip in the Shenandoah backcountry, he wasn't worried. He knew the rules. Hang your food, purify your water, respect the wildlife. On the first night, he set up camp about 4 miles from the nearest trailhead. He made a small fire, cooked dinner, and settled into his tent around 10 p.m. He woke up to absolute silence. Not the quiet of the forest, the absence of sound. No crickets, no wind, no rustling leaves. It was like the world had been put on mute. He unzipped his tent just a crack and looked out. His fire was out. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the eyes. Dozens of pairs of eyes reflecting the starlight, encircling his tent. Deer. Coyotes, no. The eyes were too high off the ground. They were spaced evenly, standing in a perfect circle about 30 feet out, just beyond the tree line. They didn't move. They just stared. David did the only thing he could think of, grabbed his bear spray and shouted. Nothing happened. The eyes didn't blink. He tried to call for help, but his phone said no service. He stayed awake the entire night, watching those eyes through the mesh of his tent. They never moved, not an inch. As the first light of dawn started to creep over the ridge, the forest came back to life. Birds chirped, the wind blew. When he finally got the courage to step outside, he saw the ground. All around his tent, about 30 feet out, the leaves had been swept away in a perfect circle. The dirt beneath was hard-packed, covered in deep, deliberate footprints, but they weren't human. They didn't have toes or heels. They were just impressions, as if something had stood there, perfectly still, for hours. He packed up in under 5 minutes. He didn't even wait to break down his tent properly. He just shoved it in his bag and walked. He told me he doesn't camp alone anymore. But sometimes on quiet nights, when the city noise fades, he finds himself listening for the silence. He's terrified that one day he'll hear it again. Our final story takes us to a suburb in Ohio. A woman named Sarah inherited her grandmother's house. It was a charming, old Victorian, filled with antiques. In the attic, she found a box she had never seen before. Inside was a porcelain doll, about 18 inches tall, with a white dress and dark painted hair. Looked old antique. But the strangest thing was the note taped to the box. It was in her grandmother's handwriting. It simply said, "Do not take this out. Do not let it look at you." Sarah isn't superstitious. She thought it was a joke, a prank from her late grandmother who had a dark sense of humor. She took the doll out and placed it on a shelf in the guest bedroom. For a few days, nothing happened. But then she started noticing small things. She would walk past the room and swear the doll's head had turned slightly. She told herself it was her imagination, a trick of the light, but the note bothered her. So she set up a camera in the guest bedroom, just a simple nanny cam pointed directly at the doll. She went to work the next day. When she came home, she reviewed the footage. For the first 8 hours, nothing happened. The doll sat there, motionless. But at 2:34 p.m., the footage got glitchy. The video distorted. When it cleared, the doll was no longer on the shelf. It was on the floor, sitting in the corner, facing the wall. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. She fast-forwarded. Nothing else moved for the rest of the day. But at 5 a.m., just as the sun was rising, the doll lifted its head, not like a toy being picked up. It lifted its head slowly, mechanically, turning toward the camera, and then it smiled. Porcelain dolls don't smile. They have painted expressions. But this one's face had changed. The painted lips were curved upward, revealing tiny painted teeth that weren't there before. Sarah didn't go into the guest bedroom. She called her brother to come over. When they opened the door together, the doll was back on the shelf, perfectly still. Its expression was normal. But the note that was taped to the box was now torn into pieces on the floor. Sarah sold the house 6 months later. She left the doll in the attic. She says she doesn't care if the new owners find it. She just wants to forget. But she admits sometimes when she closes her eyes, she still sees that smile. And she wonders, if the note said, "Do not let it look at you," what exactly did it see when it looked at her through the camera? Thank you for listening. If these stories resonated with you, or if you have your own true horror experience you've been too afraid to share, send them to I read every single one. If you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it ensures you don't miss the next collection of stories that the darkness wants to keep hidden. Stay safe. Lock your doors. And if you hear 3 knocks at 3:17 a.m., pretend you're not home. See you in the abyss.